What's happening, guys? Welcome to Let's Talk Comics, and today we are going to talk about John Byrne's Xmen Elsewhen. So now, basically, if you are unfamiliar with what this is, Hall of Fame comic book artist John Byrne has been doing on his own time, writing, drawing a X-Men story, basically on his website, publishing pages. And what we have here is those pages have been collected and published into a hardback. This is volume 1 of volume 3 of his Elsewhen project. It was something, I'm trying to remember how I initially heard about it. I want to say I heard about it on Rob Liefeld's podcast, and I had seen collected copies of the work, which was in black and white, for sale on eBay. People had basically printed out the pages, bound them together, and we're selling bootleg copies on eBay for really ridiculous price. This was announced, so it's very peculiar that it was very peculiar that I saw that it was actually going to be professionally colorized, collected, and sold. I felt like that was very strange. And, Marvel is not producing this book. This is not a Marvel production. Despite it featuring Marvel characters, X-Men, Spider-Man, whoever else shows up in here, Saurion, they're in the Savage Land or whatever. So I was very intrigued about the book, about the project. John Byrne, he is very much a Hall of Famer. His work at Marvel, on Fantastic Four, X-Men, his work at DC on the Superman books, relaunching them right after Crisis, all of it, Hall of Fame stuff. Now, he has been called out numerous times for statements he has made on his own website. He's made a bunch of statements you can look up online. He's made a bunch of statements that at the most you would call them incredibly offensive. At the least you would call them outdated. I don't subscribe to his thinking about a lot of those statements. John Byrne is free to say what he wants to, and I'm not buying this book for John Byrne's social commentary. I'm buying this book because it is very much a interesting project. It's very much something that I never thought would see the light of day. But when you talk about, there's a hardcover of John Byrne unpublished X-Men work coming out. As a comic book fan, how can you not buy that? So I, on one hand, cannot agree with the statements John Byrne has made in the past, and also I, on the other hand, as a diehard comic book fan, and I recognize the input that John Byrne, the impact that John Byrne has had on comic books, can pick this book up. It's capable. I'm totally capable of holding two thoughts in my head at the same time. So it came in the mail yesterday from Amazon, and I'll give a little brief rundown right here. This will sum up what the book is about more than I can. John Byrne returns to the characters whose adventure he first steered to artistic greatness nearly 5 decades ago. This is the first of a 3-volume series of new adventures featuring the X-Men, written and drawn by John Byrne. But more than just a return to the series, he helped bring to prominence through much beloved, influential storylines. This is a one-of-a-kind tale like no other. With Elsewhen, John Byrne not only returns to steer the adventures of the X-Men with special guest stars like Avengers, Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man, but he does so by picking up where he left off. Now, this is where the big hook is. Elsewhen envisions a universe of stories as though Byrne never left the book in 1980, with one major difference. Here, Jean Grey did not sacrifice herself for the good of the universe. Rather, she survived her experiences as Dark Phoenix, and neither she nor the team nor the Marvel Universe will ever be the same. So that is basically the hook for the book. Elsewhen, just like Elseworlds, but it's the same world, but it's just a different time. And from what I've seen, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. It looks like it just came off the shelf. It really looks like it just came off the shelf in 1980. It's classic Byrne artwork. The artwork looks like he hasn't missed a beat whatsoever. Still incredibly beautiful work. I mean, just look at this outer space scene. Look at that. Just beautiful stuff right here. It's the classic X-Men team from that era in their classic uniforms. We've got the Colossus at the time was not the big hulking monstrosity he is now. He was just a very big, buff young man who turned into metal. So if you are familiar with the John Byrne era of X-Men, you know exactly what you're going to get with this. Now, John Byrne, to me, his capabilities has never been, I've never questioned his capabilities as an artist. The things that I sometimes struggled with John Byrne is his writing. And it looks like right here, like I said before, it looks like this is picking up right where it left off. So if you do not like that 80s style of writing, the heavy description boxes right here, like look at this. It takes less than 2 seconds. Kitty's power flows through the robotic form, and instantly it begins to sink. Its atoms merging with the asphalt and the dirt beneath it. And as the ground rises level with its central power systems, Kitty tells herself that what she hears is only cold, unliving electric noise. But it will haunt her dreams for months to come as the sound of a sentinel screaming. So if this style of comic book, is very jarring to you, if you are a new fan, you might be kind of turned off by this type of stuff. But this is just, how they wrote stuff back in the day. So, like I said, I've never really questioned John Byrne's abilities as an artist. Sometimes his writing, to me, leaves a little bit to be desired. But, like I said, this is such a special and unique project that I couldn't call myself a comic book fan and not pick this up. I think everybody, especially if you're an old head like myself, you owe yourself a favor to pick this up. Wow, look at that. Beautiful shot of the Blackbird right there. And called his name Magneto. Oh, look at Magneto. That looks very Jack Kirby-ish right here. That's a very Jack Kirby Magneto face. FF. But no. Long story short, this book looks incredible. I really can't wait to get into it. It's such an unusual project, and especially it's such an unusual project to actually come to fruition and get published. it's very surprising that happened. And like I said, John Byrne has made some very controversial statements, but I'm an adult enough where I can disagree with what he said, and I can also want to pick up his book and check out to see what John Byrne is doing. That's called being a grown up and being a professional. So, Xmen Elsewhen looks incredible. Cannot wait to check it out. This is a 1 in a million type of project, and who better to have doing some sort of book like this than a legend like John Byrne himself. So till next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good day, and bye-bye.